Welcome to another edition of Immigration Nation. My name is Nicole Whitaker. I'm an immigration attorney based out of Towson, Maryland. I'm here with attorney Adriana Jimenez, also with our firm Whitaker Legal. Hi, Adriana.
Hi.
Although my office is in Towson, Maryland, Adriana is in San Antonio, Texas, and we represent clients all over the country. So if you have an immigration case, whether it's a VAWA case or any other type of immigration case, give us a call at 410 207 9272 to schedule your consultation. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the types of cases we specialize in here at Whitaker Legal, VAWA. VAWA is a law. It stands for the Violence Against Women Act, but it's not only for women, it's for women and men. In fact, probably the majority of our VAWA clients are men and not women. So, Adriana, tell us a little bit about what is VAWA and who might qualify for VAWA.
Yeah, so VAWA are for people who have been victims of battery or extreme cruelty. So people who have been victims of abuse by either their U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident spouse, also a child, a U.S. citizen child, or a parent. And so any of those people who have been victimized by those people can qualify. Additionally, you have to be a person of good moral character, and there's a couple of other elements we can talk about here in a little bit. But you must show that relationship, and that that relationship was entered into in good faith. The marriage is a good faith marriage.
Yeah. VAWA is a particularly powerful or beneficial immigration program because for a lot of people that are in the US and undocumented, if they entered the US illegally without a visa, there are not many options to apply for a green card on your own without having to leave the country. But through VAWA, it's possible to get a work permit and possibly even a green card on your own
Mm-hmm.
without leaving the country, totally within the United States. And it's possible to get your immigration status without your spouse's help. In a lot of situations, the US citizen or green card holding spouse has power over the immigrant spouse, and they use that power to get the immigrant spouse to do what they want as a method of controlling them. They might say, well, if you don't do this for me, I'm not going to file your immigration application, um, or you better do what I say, or I'm not going to your interview, or I'm going to withdraw the immigration application I've already filed. So through VAWA, it's possible to apply for a work permit or green card without your wife or husband's help. Like you said, VAWA is not just for spouses of green card holders and US citizens, it's
Yeah.
also for undocumented immigrant parents of US citizens over 21 and children under 21 of US citizens. But today we're going to talk about primarily spouses of US citizens and green card holders. So, Adriana, tell me about, do you have any recent stories to share or client success stories from current former clients of ours?
Yeah. So we have a lot of interesting cases that I kind of want to talk to you about today, just because I think that they are somewhat different, not our typical straightforward VAWA. Hey, I was married to someone who was abusive and I was able to prove that. But this is kind of a little bit different. So this is a case where our client was in a relationship with her abusive partner, her abusive husband, and they were in a state where common law marriages are valid. So here in Texas, you don't necessarily have to go to a courthouse and have a civil ceremony or even a religious ceremony. You don't have to legally marry. You just have to meet certain elements of a common law marriage that you have shown to others that you are married, that you have presented yourself as a married couple, and other elements. So this client didn't legally marry her spouse, but the state that she lived in recognized common law marriages, and we were able to establish that she was in a marriage based on some of the evidence that she had. So something that maybe um, wouldn't she wasn't technically married by law, but we were able to overcome that and prove that she was in a common law marriage and that she was being abused by her spouse, and she qualified for common law marriage and for VAWA. So she right now has a work permit and she was able to get a travel document.
So tell me a little bit about her case. What made her eligible for VAWA?
Yeah, so she had, she was a victim of different types of abuse. So whenever a domestic violence can look differently for different people, different relationships and different situations. So, there's all kinds of abuse. There can be emotional abuse, financial abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal, psychological. So, it is a wide range of things. And a lot of times victims don't recognize that they themselves are victims. And it takes some probing and just getting to know the client and developing a rapport with them for them to feel open enough to tell us these things. So while maybe there were some small incidences, the red flags start to come up. She tells us more and more about these things and different things that would happen, that that he would threatened to divorce her or leave her. She would destroy her possessions or her documents, things like that. And then that's where we kind of probe and speak to her a little bit more on what exactly is happening. And that is something that we try to do very delicately, because at the end of the day, like, these are people who've been victims of abuse, and it's not easy talking about these things. But the benefit is, at the end of the day, you can receive a benefit from immigration based on some pretty traumatizing things that you've gone through. So receive some of the benefits that you can receive from VAWA is that you get deferred action. So you get protection against deportation. You can work lawfully. You're eligible for a green card, and you can include family members. So certain family members. So if you're a spouse of, or you're a victim of violence by your spouse, and let's say you have a child from another relationship, and they can also be included in that petition. So those are all just really great benefits as a result of something that you're going through.
Yeah, people can be eligible for benefits through VAWA, even if, like I mentioned earlier, they entered without inspection, even if they have a removal order because they either attended their immigration court proceedings and a judge denied whatever application they had filed, or if they had immigration court proceedings and never attended and therefore have that deportation order pending against them. When clients consult with us regarding VAWA, I always make a point to let them know that the VAWA process is confidential. The main purpose of the VAWA program through immigration law is to give the immigrant spouse immigration benefits. The purpose of the program is not to get their U.S. citizen or green card holding spouse in trouble. USCIS and our office is not going to call their spouse. No one's going to interview their spouse. And that petition is kept confidential within a specific department in the immigration service within USCIS. There are a lot of procedures or systems in place to protect the immigrant applicant for VAWA in those cases?
Yeah. We we have clients that try to check their case with immigration and see with USCIS case status, and you can't even do that. You can't check any of those things if you are a victim of abuse because they are so protected. So
Yeah,
there should be no.
they don't want your abusive spouse to be able to go on the USCIS website and find out what's going on in your case.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of protections in place for them.
Do you have another client success story to share with us?
Yeah. So, well, this is a case that's pending, but I think that a really strong case that I'm really confident that we will win. But this was a case where the abuse was just so severe that the abuser claimed to the police that the victim was the aggressor, so that she was the victim. So the abuser claimed she was the victim. But this abuser was really aggressive, was really overly jealous, would insult our client, would even became physically violent, push him, would hit him, accused him with the police of having drugs. That wasn't true. And ultimately, in an incident of, in a call for domestic violence, she alleged that he had abused her when that wasn't the case. So he went to jail, and we are currently fighting his case. We think it's really strong, but it's just so flagrantly abusive that you have protections whenever you're a victim of this kind of abuse. And in his case it was very, very obvious how she was manipulating him, was coercive, would use filing a petition for him, against him, all of these things where it's just really awful. But he has a way to get his green card without her now. So he doesn't have to rely on her or walk on eggshells, just in order to have some kind of legal status. He can now do it independently or self petition. That's what VAWAs are called, self petitions. He can now self petition.
That abuse of the legal system or threatening to abuse the legal system is a very common element of VAWA cases that I've seen in our practice. It doesn't happen in every case, but I think it's a very common element that the US citizen or green card holding spouse, whether they're a husband or a wife, says, you are nothing without me. I'm the US citizen. I'm going to call the police and report you to the police. I'm going to get you arrested. I'm going to get you deported. They're going to believe me and not you because I'm the US citizen. I have legal status. So those are definitely scenarios in which the immigrant applicant has this potential avenue to petition for a work permit and green card on their own without their spouse's help. A lot of our clients are apprehensive or scared or hesitant to share details if they feel like they can't prove that these things have happened. They might say, "Well, I don't have evidence. I don't have documents. There are no police reports. Do you still want to know what happened?" And our answer is always yes. There
Yeah.
is no requirement that you have documentary evidence of the abuse. In a lot of cases, there may not be police reports or any other physical documentary evidence of the problems that you've been having with your U.S. citizen or green card holding spouse. All that we need is your honest testimony of what's happened in your relationship. Also important to note is that it doesn't matter if these problems are happening now or if they happened in the past. You can be eligible for VAWA based on problems that occurred early in your relationship or problems that are ongoing now. you can apply for VAWA whether you are still married to and living with your spouse, whether you're separated, or whether you're divorced within the past 2 years. If you're in removal proceedings, there may be options to file VAWA even after, uh, longer than more than 2 years after a divorce.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up. The 2-year filing deadline is really, really important. So, and it's the 2 years comes into play whenever you're actually divorced from your spouse or that relationship ceases to exist. 2 years from either the death of the abuser or the divorce from the abuser. So if you are in the process of getting divorced, but your divorce isn't finalized, then that time doesn't start running yet. It's until the divorce is final, judge signs the order on that day is when you start counting 2 years. So
That's a good point. Um, a lot of times clients ask me, well, don't I have to separate from my spouse in order to file for VAWA? Because in your mind, it might make sense that if you're in a relationship with, um, these serious problems, immigration would require you to be separated in order to file. But that is not a requirement. In fact, um, there are many cases that we've seen where either the problems happened in the past and the couple has resolved those issues and moved past them and they've done the work and, they're not experiencing those problems anymore, or the immigrant spouse chooses to remain in the relationship for other reasons. They might be financial reasons. The reasons are their own. One of the most common reasons that I see is people stay in relationships because of their children. Um, One case that we had a few years ago, was the case of a young man from Mexico. He came to the US back in 2006. He came to work in the United States and eventually he met his US citizen wife. Um, she suffered from bipolar, and probably as a result of the bipolar disorder, she self medicated and she also had addiction issues. Um, was she had problems with drugs, she had problems with alcohol, and that combined with the mental illness, made the relationship very toxic. Early on in the relationship, um, she ended up getting pregnant. He was not aware that she was not taking the birth control like she told him she was. And so she got pregnant. They got married because that's what, he felt was the right thing to do. And throughout their relationship, because of the mental illness, because of the addiction, because of the alcoholism, um, his US citizen wife took advantage of him. He was the sole breadwinner working for the family. Um, she would manipulate him into buying things for her, giving her money by saying, well, if you don't do this for me, if you don't give me money, I'm going to call immigration on you, or I'm going to have you deported. Um, when she would have, in episodes where her mental illness, where she was suffering more from her mental illness, she would have maybe manic episodes and get aggressive, violent, throw things, destroy things, try to scare him. She would kick him out of the house. There were times where she would threaten to call the police on him, and in fact, she did call the police on him a couple times. Um, Thankfully, the police knew the situation, and, he was never arrested. But, over the years, he experienced financial abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, and ultimately he consulted with our office just kind of as a general screening. He didn't know that the VAWA program existed. He just wanted to know what he could be eligible for. He had a US citizen wife. Because he entered the US without inspection, without a visa, a marriage based adjustment of status wasn't really an option for him. But because of the problems he'd experienced with his wife, VAWA was an option. At the time, he was still living with his wife. They're still married to this day. They have 2 children together, and he remains with her because it's the best situation for their children. And he has his work permit, he got his green card, and within just a couple of years, he'll be eligible to apply for citizenship.
Wow, it's great news.
So, do you have any other final thoughts on VAWA or any of our recent VAWA successes?
Well, just something I think that's worth mentioning, and you talked about it a little bit, was cancellation and removal of VAWA. So there's a special rule in immigration proceedings that you can also apply for VAWA. So the elements are a little bit different, but ultimately it's based on the same thing, that you're a victim of abuse or battery, extreme cruelty. And you can apply for that. And like you said, that doesn't limit you to the 2 years. So it's definitely a benefit if you are in removal proceedings, you're fighting a deportation case, and you're a victim of abuse. That's something you definitely want to explore and see if you qualify for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Adriana, for speaking with us today about the cases
Yeah.
that you've been involved in, the cases you've seen. I hope this information was helpful to you guys. If you have a VAWA case or any immigration case in general, we help people get work permits, green cards, U.S. citizenship, and we help them petition for their family members, whether the family members live
Mhm.
here or outside of the country. You can give us a call at 410 207 9272 to schedule your consultation with me, with attorney Adriana Jimenez, or with the rest of the consultation team at Whitaker Legal. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you the next time on Immigration Nation.